Okay, I'm joined by Jennie Milne, and Jennie, you're a lecturer at the Gray's School of Art in Aberdeen, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, on BA photography.
Ah, photography, there's the connection.
Yeah.
Um, Excellent. So, thank you for coming along to do this little chat. I suppose I'm curious to find out a little bit more about the creative side of therapeutic photography. And I know therapeutic photography is not something you're teaching,
No.
but photography certainly is. And I know you've got an interest in therapeutic photography. Um, do you want to just start by giving me a little bit of a background about your own interest in therapeutic photography and what's brought you to this area?
Okay, so I've used photography myself to process some really deep trauma that I suffered as a child, a great deal of loss and abuse, and also my father was a photographer. I lost him when I was 10 years old, and photography for me provided a connection, a link to my dad. It was his world.
Mm,
And so I think I always had an interest in photography for that reason, but I came to study photography late. I raised a big family, and I found that as I began to study photography and process my family history through the lens, if you like,
mhm,
that it was tremendously healing in a sense and empowering. And I've met so many fantastic people, through that means.
mhm.
Actually focus my lens on other people who've suffered trauma and try to present their lives in a positive way. And it's helped me to understand resilience. I've kind of really looked at aspects of resilience through my photography as well.
So were you using any particular techniques, or was it just the art of going out and creating images?
I think initially, before I came to study photography, I did an HND at the college in Aberdeen, and it's very technically based.
Mm,
You're producing images that must be compositionally very strong, and all those different elements. You're thinking about the lenses that you're choosing and the genre, how to represent that genre the best that you can, really. Um, so I've forgotten your question, Neil.
I just wondered if there was any sort of specific techniques you were
Yeah,
using
the,
when
the,
you
the
were
jet,
exploring therapeutic benefits.
when I've been photographing people, I do a lot of portraiture.
Mm,
I definitely employed different techniques. The kind of lens that I've used has been very important. I tend to use either a 35mm lens or a 50mm portrait lens. But you really have to create a connection with the person that you're photographing, make them feel comfortable. And you're thinking about including their environment sometimes in the image. What do you want to say through the photograph? You want to create a connection with the viewer.
mhm,
So yes, I've employed various different techniques, I would say. Sometimes I've used a tripod with a slow shutter speed. Sometimes, I've worked a lot with natural light rather
mhm.
than using, additional light, because I've wanted to have a kind of natural feel to the images.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think definitely understanding how to create, be creative, how to have the skills to create the image that you want is
Yeah.
really helpful.
And in those moments where you find that there is a therapeutic outcome, is that an intention from the outset that you're setting out to have this therapeutic connection, or is it almost like a fortunate byproduct of the process?
I think reflecting on my own journey, it's been a byproduct,
Mm,
but it wasn't my intention initially. I mean, I did a series of portraits with people that had suffered severe trauma, and I was not happy with them because they weren't photojournalistic enough. They didn't have a drama and impact, but they were people having a cup of tea, talking to me. And
mhm.
actually, those kind of images created a huge opportunity for connection and were therapeutic in the sense that people could then place themselves in that kind of situation and make that sort of connection.
Yeah.
I would say that it's not our primary purpose at the Grey School of Art. The photography course, it's not primarily therapy, but
Yeah.
it's definitely a byproduct, or not even a byproduct. It becomes something that really empowers students' work.
Hmm.
So, and helps them.
Yeah. Do you find that there's particular techniques, and I guess I'm talking about techniques with the camera that are maybe more conducive to being therapeutic rather than because you said that coming from the college, there's maybe a kind of a formulaic approach to taking photographs. So do you find that if you challenge those formulaic approaches or introduce different ways of seeing, that becomes more therapeutic for people?
I think it definitely can do. Taking time, I think, is one thing that you
Mhm.
don't tend to do when you go in. When I came into photography, I took hundreds of photographs. You're looking at a really, a clean outcome. You want a really strong outcome. What I have found is that, maybe using a tripod, a slow shutter speed, and approaching photography differently, maybe even using analog photography,
Mm.
it causes you to slow down and actually think about what you're doing and engage with the subject, whether it's landscape. I'm not particularly a landscape photographer, but it gives you that time to consider what you're doing, and a breathing space. And I think that that is therapeutic because we live in such a busy outcome driven world.
Hmm.
Photography, when you take your time, allows you to step back from that
Yeah.
and, be in that kind of space that allows you to then think creatively. I used to panic. I would be given a brief. Okay, you need to do X, Y, or Z. How am I going to do that? Well, how am I going to create a project? And it created this sense of panic. But once you step back and enjoy what you're doing, I think, yeah, definitely that's helpful. So I would say taking your time,
Yeah.
is what, and that is a technique, that is something. There's a very interesting photographer called Michael Kenner. I'm not sure if you've come across Michael Kenner. He's a landscape photographer, and he takes a lot of time. He has exposures of even 10 hours, up to 10 hours.
Wow.
And yeah, it's that coming away and allowing yourself to be a part of the process. I think
Hmm.
it's very helpful.
Yeah. So yeah, so taking time seems to be a big thing, and it's almost like that maybe encourages you to look at things in a different way
Yes.
than you would without a camera, because obviously with the camera you're exploring. It's almost like a task to look around and notice things and try and
It
find something to focus in on.
Yes, but if you give yourself space, I mean, we've just given our students a brief, a photograph a week. They come up with a word. They have to interpret that word. It can't be a technical word. It's got to be, a theme or something. They take one photograph and then we read that photograph together as a group. And it's to encourage, strong composition and a visual language where you're seeing a photograph in everyday life.
Hmm.
But it's been extremely helpful to, increase technical ability, but also to really think about what you're doing. And I think that's the thing in photography. Everybody has a camera, everybody's taking pictures. Some of them we never look at again, thousands of them we never look at again. So, how do we, for our students, they're wanting a career in photography as
Yeah.
professional photographers. How do we how do they become different? And I think it's,
Mhm.
by really thinking about what they're doing and having a context behind their work,
Yeah.
but being able to, technically be strong. I think it's always important to build those technical skills,
Hmm.
have an understanding of what the camera can do,
Yeah.
depth of field, and all these different elements help you to have creative control over the kind of image that you want to produce.
Hmm. That's really interesting because the way I've worked with groups in the past, I've got a 6 week block, and I tend to meet with them for 2 hours a week, and I I don't really go near the technical side. It's much more about, you've got free reign, go and capture
Yes,
whatever you want
yeah,
to. But from listening to you, it's almost like there's scope to have that added depth. You know, if you have more
Absolutely.
time with a group, you could actually spend a little bit more time focusing in on the technical language of the camera and how that can be enhanced, because it sounds like it's all then connected to the power of the end result, the image itself.
Yeah, what you want to say. I mean, every photograph is a form of speech, isn't it? It's a language.
Yeah.
Photography is a language, although it's a visual language. So we've had students that maybe want to show the, the drama that the life's involved in, how everything is not working out for them at the moment. And we might suggest intentional camera movement, ICM, where they're moving the camera with the shutter open and getting a kind of funny effect.
Yeah.
So I think knowing that you can achieve something with control over the camera that helps you to say what you want to say is very helpful, rather than sometimes just composing an image and saying, yes, I'm feeling isolated. Here's a tree that's standing on its own, maybe a beautiful image, but there might be something more that you want to do.
Yeah.
Explore isolation. You maybe want to separate an object from the background, in which case you would think about using, depth of field and aperture, a wider aperture. So, yeah.
That's yeah, I can see how that would be, a powerful impact on the image. And you sort of said, you talk about analog photograph, but then everyone has access to all sorts of different equipment nowadays. Do you think it matters what kind of equipment's used? I suppose particularly in therapeutic photography, where you're working with groups maybe on a shorter time scale.
On a shorter time scale, I don't think it matters at all. No, I don't. I think your camera is a tool. That's what it is. And, iPhones, mobile phones are as good, and you can get different effects and things. I would encourage playing around with those kind of, effects that you've got within the camera itself.
Hmm.
Maybe to isolate a subject, you could play around with. They do have aperture and things, I think, within iPhones,
Yeah.
or a basic DSLR. It doesn't matter about the equipment. No, it's about what you want to say. But
Hmm.
if you have the time and you decide you like it, and this is something that's helping you, then I would encourage exploring analog photography, which is definitely takes much more time. And you've got,
Hmm.
only 36 frames in your camera. You're going to think a lot more about each image that you're taking, and then you can explore that further in the dark room, and how you want that to be, how that translates into the image that you want to produce.
I mean, that makes so much sense. And the reason I've not used that with the groups I've worked in, again, is down to that time scale and, the convenience of having a digital image at the just almost, well, not almost, but instantly, that then can be used for exploration and discussion. Um, but absolutely, again, with the luxury of time, it would be so nice to then delve into using analog and then spending time in the darkroom to look at developing those images as
Yes.
well. Um,
Yeah.
so I can see there's an enormous potential for people from creative backgrounds to bring in their own skills and knowledge into these therapeutic photography techniques to really, I guess, enhance and further slow down the experience, and using those their own skills to I guess suggest ways of enhancing communication.
Yes, yeah, definitely. I think it is like it's like any language, you start off with a few words, but if you've got the ability, to use other words to explain what it is you want to say. And that's the way I look at technical skill within photography. I mean, our students are kind of back to front in a way. They come in with a lot of technical skill.
Mhm.
We try to move them away from that into, why are you taking photographs? What do you want to say? And along that process, they then discover a little bit more about who they are, and they fall in love with photography in a different way.
Yeah.
And so I don't think it matters either way. It's empowering. Photography can be empowering in so many different ways.
Hmm.
And it can be a lifetime pursuit, or it can be just an interval that helps you get through something.
Yeah. Have there ever been moments then when somebody's maybe revealed something that you've thought, oh, I'm not really sure how to handle this or work with this? Or do you find that the creative process almost contains people in terms of what they reveal?
Yeah, there have definitely been projects and things that people have done.
Mm,
You know, we've actually looked at, you know, follow-up conversations because there's been concerns maybe about the student that's expressing themselves in this way. But I suppose you find a way of helping them then to, you know, create a project in a safe environment that allows them to speak, that allows them to say, that allows them to create a connection. Um, we don't actually stop anybody doing anything
hmm
that they want to do, but we just try and guide them through it. And sometimes, yes, it raises red flags, you know, but then that's just an opportunity to come alongside that student.
Yeah.
We did have a student last year who we always start off with a self-portrait brief. So they're all a bit scared about the why of photography. You know, they know how to take photographs, a bit scared of the why. So we introduce them to a very short brief where they interpret who they are through
hmm
images. It can be through absence. You know, they don't have to be in the frame. It's not a traditional portrait. And this student struggled a lot with anxiety, and you know, she created a project called The Me You Don't See as a result of that brief. And actually all her work from that point on stemmed from this. She experimented with, you know, water and different ways of expressing herself, um, different techniques, and she went into the darkroom and did a lot of amazing work. So you can see it as actually being, you might come across something that's difficult, but then when you work through it becomes something positive.
hmm
Students tend to move on then from that struggle into something else.
Yeah. I mean, I often equate it to because people have got choice in what they photograph, it's
Yeah,
almost it seems unfair to inhibit or restrict that choice by saying,
yes,
"Oh, I don't want you to show that." So if somebody's chosen to share that, they then share it. It's objectified, it's externalized, it's out there for people to see, and it's almost then easier to deal with. And yes, it might be shocking for us, but as you say,
yeah,
then we can come alongside them. We can look at the appropriate resources that we might need to refer somebody on to if we don't have the
yeah,
skills to do that.
absolutely. Yeah,
Um,
and that's what we do. But I think that you know, photography allows you to speak things that you wouldn't be able to actually say to somebody. You can
mhm.
present someone with an image that might be a cry for help, you know, and in a sensitive and supportive environment, you know, it can be very helpful. But again, yes, we can always refer students on for
Yeah,
further support and help, and we do.
yeah. And obviously there are so many different techniques that it's difficult to drill down on one. But say, for example, you were giving me a bit of advice and I was working with a group for 6 weeks. Are there any, or is there one technique that you think, go and try that, give that a try with your group and maybe encourage them to play with this aspect of photography to see what results you could get?
Well, that's a really difficult question, Neil, because I think it depends on the group of students that you have and the kind of work that they want to do. But I would say to gain some control over two things: shutter speed, you know, have a look at different shutter speeds.
Hmm
That does to an image, whether you want something to be very clearly in focus or whether you want to play with light trails and things like that. That would be a basic, you know, good thing to start with. And also depth of field and aperture, and
hmm
the ability then to isolate something or you know, take in the whole picture. So I think those are two basic things that I would always teach if I was teaching photography from the ground up, that can then they're skills that can be applied therapeutically, because
Yeah.
you're giving you command of the camera, you're understanding that rule of thirds,
hmm
exposure, you know, aperture, you know, the exposure rule of thirds.
Yeah.
Rule of three. No, I call it the rule of thirds. It's not. There's a 3 point ISO, aperture, and shutter speed.
Oh
Those,
yeah, yeah.
I call it the rule of thirds to get across to my students that it's a similar thing. No, it's not composition. But that would help you,
hmm
I think, initially, is getting those, and then just there's all kinds of things you can do. You can put things over the lens. maybe a jar over the
Mhm.
lens to create a different effect. You can shoot through things, think about borders or framing of a picture.
Yeah.
That really helps. It takes your eye in. We look at, with our students, all the elements within a frame. Why
Mhm.
is something there? We talk a lot, we read images the way we read books, you
Yeah.
know? So everybody has their own different interpretation. Think about those kind of things. What have you got in the frame? Does it need to be there? Is there a purpose for it? That's not technical, is it? That's
No, no, it sounds like fun. I think that's it.
all ties together. I think it all ties together.
Yeah, it links into. I speak about Winnicott quite a lot in the course, presentation of true self and false self. But obviously, Winnicott wrote about the joy of play and the learning through play
Yeah.
as
Well,
well.
yeah,
And it sounds like if you just had a room full of things to incorporate into your photography, that could be actually just really, really good fun
absolutely.
and just
A-
experiment.
Absolutely. I think what you want to do is encourage a love of photography, encourage a love of this language, this visual language,
Yeah,
that's accessible to all of us. And it can take you in any direction, and it can help you over or help you through things. I mean, I can't believe what I'm doing today, having overcome a lot of different things with my camera.
yeah, yeah. Excellent, Jenny. Thank you so much for taking time. Just final question: is there anything that you see yourself progressing to do with photography? Is there any projects that you think I'd really like to use that kind of therapeutic photography approach to look at this area or that area?
Well, as I say, I'm very interested in resilience.
Hmm.
And how people come through circumstances that, you just can't get your head around. I've worked with Holocaust survivors and things like that, and that's an area that I would like to definitely explore
Hmm.
with my lens. And I think I would also really like to help other people see the value in that
Yeah.
themselves. So for me, the camera is a voice for others. It's not just a voice for myself, but I use it as a voice for others that maybe can't speak. So yeah, I'd like to go more down that route.
Superb. All right. Thank you very much, Jenny, for your time. Much appreciated.
Welcome.